I'm here with my neighbor Nick, who just had twins. So I'm going to ask him a few questions. How has having twins affected your lifestyle?
Oh, well, since it's only been 12 days, it's radically. You change everything. You don't get as much sleep, obviously, but you're also on their schedule. So every 3 hours, you're feeding them and trying to get them back to sleep, making sure they're taking in the world. So everything else kind of stops. There's not really a lot of time to cook a meal. There's not really time to go to the grocery store. So you're really kind of balancing out what they really need to survive and things you need to do every day to be an adult.
Yeah. How much time does your wife Val get off?
So my wife Valerie gets 3 months off, only because of the Family Medical Leave Act, which means that every person in a company that has 15 or more people, if I'm not mistaken, is allowed to take up to 12 weeks off unpaid leave. It could be a father or mother. She's taking those 3 months off. However, only a portion of that is actually covered by her paid time off, which is either sick or vacation time. The other time is being given to her from disability. So insurance companies consider pregnancy and having a kid a disability, and they'll give her a certain amount of her salary for the rest of the weeks that she can't have vacation or sick time.
Okay. And so did you get that same amount of time off?
No, because I don't have disability. So I just use so I'll have just April off, so that's a total of 3 weeks or so. I did just start this position about a year ago, but fortunately my company has a lot of good vacation time and sick time, so it builds up to about 3 weeks or so. But I won't be able to take off the full 3 months that she did, because otherwise I would have no income whatsoever for those 2 months we just have a percentage of hers, and so we'd be eating ramen and it's a little off that.
So in France, the mother, if it's a third kid, she gets 10 extra weeks. So since you already have one child, you have 10 extra weeks. Since it's twins, she would also get an extra 12 weeks.
Wow.
And then for every day that they're premature, you get 1 other day.
Wow.
So she would have earned about 24 extra weeks. And then also in France, it's also a question. So in France, all hospital bills are paid for. So that's from day 1 of pregnancy to 6 months of pregnancy, and then from the day you give birth until 12 days after. So that includes any testing you want to get done, the ambulance, any classes you want to take, any medicine. So how would having all the bills paid for help with the burden of being able to go back as late, and how would that have helped you if you didn't have to pay any hospital bills?
I would have helped immensely, because you don't get as some people like to call them, over a buy one get one when you have twins in the hospital. You get charged double for what those costs, and because it is twins, instead of having your child in a birthing room, you have to go to the operating room automatically. So then you're also adding on a second doctor, more nurses and staff. So before we had our daughter, we actually just had 2 or 3 people in the room when she was giving birth to myself. And I was actually actively helping with the birth of my daughter, which was unexpected, but but with the twins, I was scrubbed in, I couldn't do anything, but the staff size tripled. So we haven't seen the bill yet, it's still only 12 days, but it will come eventually. And I think it would have helped the decision of maybe taking some more time off. And my position lets me work from home more. Valerie's not so much because he's a veterinarian, but I could have stayed home and done some work and not needed to get paid for it. I could have just been doing it to keep things in order so my nothing falls through the cracks over 3 months. But we're expecting the bill to be pretty outrageous. We have a high deductible plan in our insurance, so we had to have hit a very high number before the 80% payment would have kicked in, but still we're responsible for 20% of that. Lots of numbers when you're an adult. It's a lot of fun. So yes, learn as much about finances when you can. That's cool. But if all that stuff is paid for, we could worry about the other things, such as groceries, having to put a new down payment on a car since our cars are too small for 3 kids. But all these other things have to kind of wait until we see how much the hospital comes back in. And then we also have to see, what her percentage of her income is going to be for them 2 and the second and third months of her being off from work. So that would have been immensely helpful. And even when you're leaving the hospital, I don't know if anybody in class is talking about this, but the last thing you do before you leave the hospital is somebody comes to ask you to pay a bill. He shows up with a computer and says, here's what we're calculating, and you owe yada yada yada. Would you like to pay that off now, or And so last time we were like, oh, wow, we felt kind of bad. We were like, well, all right, we'll just pay it off. So we put it on our credit card. And this time we're like, how about you just send for our insurance?
Yeah.
And then they'll bill us. And they're like, well, how about just a good thing? I'd really like to see that. I'm like, send you the insurance. That's what we have insurance for. So
Yeah.
some of those things you don't really know about until you actually have a kid, and then nobody tells you these things. But we knew that going in. We knew that the reception we would have to pay before you even left.
Yeah.
And so that's their right as soon as you're ready to take your kid home. But knowing that if it wouldn't have been there, like in France, that would have been a whole stress level alleviated.
Yeah. So lastly, do you think America should mandate maternity and paternity leave? That's one of the things in France that it's mandatory that you at least take a certain amount of days off. So do you think that would help or harm America?
I think you'd have to have other things in place before you could do that. And I think we see with the mandate from the Affordable Care Act that there's other things that have to become available to companies and people before you can kind of mandate those things. In my opinion, I think it would happen. It could happen if we didn't require businesses to pay health insurance.
Yeah.
So if we took that out of the realm of businesses having to worry about people and out of their own pockets paying for health insurance, and you let the government pay for it, you had perhaps universal health care and you had universal paternity and maternity leave, in which nobody's losing out because we can all access it equally. Even in our current system, it's not all equally accessible. My wife can only take 3 to 12 weeks off in 3 months because she has disability thanks to her family's health insurance, whereas I can't. So even that being said, you have to kind of remove some other barriers first to make sure that nobody feels like they're losing out on their employee being gone for 3 months, or 4 months, or 5 months. And I think it can be done. I think we're smart enough in this country to actually get it accomplished. And I think there's some smart people out there that want to see it done. And my generation, the oldest of the millennials, I am, your generation, the oldest one. So, but as everybody comes through and kind of see the value of family time, we see the value of our personal lives in conjunction with our professional careers. We see that they can be together, but there has to be a better balance in between. And I think once you have smart people making better decisions and realizing that it can be done, it's not trying to take away from somebody or a business. Maybe we'll see it. We'll see it in our lifetime. Maybe in the next 5 years, but unfortunately, I will no longer have children. It'll be for you and your classmates to take advantage of all that. So,
Well, thank you so much for answering all my questions.
You're very welcome.